Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. Thank you for doing that. And I'm very glad to be joined by my friend and colleague, Mr. Earl Eues. Earl, welcome back, man.
Keith, good to be here today.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a minute, huh?
It has been a little while.
Yeah.
Just both of us with busy schedules.
We just are. And a lot of people are. You know, we talk about some of the problems that people are having, supply chain issues, and just being busy. And a lot of these places are still having personnel issues.
Yeah,
getting people to work.
It's the same way with the parish government. We have lots of openings, so I encourage everyone, if you're looking for a position or a job, to please look at the parish's website. There's plenty of openings there.
Right. There's no opening for the director of Terrebonne Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, because that is you, my friend, and we're so very glad to have you in that role. It changes all the time. Our focus kind of changes a little bit. Today's a pretty important day when it comes to weather.
Yeah, today, Phil Klotchbutch, his last name, is going to give out the Colorado State University prediction on hurricanes, and they're pretty accurate out of the Colorado State University. So we're going to take a look at those. It's early in the season.
Right.
They update those throughout the season, and the last update usually comes out in August.
Right.
So we'll just take a look at them, and I got to tell everybody, it only takes one hurricane or one tropical storm to cause us any damages or issues here in Terrebonne Parish. So don't look at the numbers too much.
Right.
But it kind of gives you kind of a guidance of what we can expect this year.
Well, and the other thing is, kind of funny, coming out of Colorado is very interesting to me, but that's just where they are really good at identifying and being able to do that research.
Yeah, well, two of the top climate scientists are up there at Colorado State. A lot of the other universities that do some predictions, they're not the only one.
Right.
A lot of them are landlocked and not around the Gulf Coast.
Right.
But they do a very good job, and so I just got back from the National Hurricane Conference last week.
Right.
So we try to listen to see what's happening, what's going on, and it looks like we're going to have a El Nino develop in the Pacific, which typically means the waters are cooler, and then in the Pacific, and it causes a lot more westerly shear over the Gulf of Mexico and in the Caribbean. So it usually kind of tampers down the number of hurricanes or tropical systems that develop. There's no guarantee.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But it does kind of, they think that's what prevents a lot of those hurricanes from forming. The other deal, though, is they're saying that the Atlantic is still a little warmer than it usually is. And so they may have a difficult time giving a very good prediction this year because of the Atlantic still being a little warm.
It's really interesting to me how all of those things just factor in, and we know, and we've talked about this even with some of the guys that do some of the levee districts and all the work that they're doing with Morganza to the Gulf. Just a small impact to where a storm comes in, even just a tropical storm, can make a huge difference in impact on different communities.
Yeah, well, even you saw that this week with that little low pressure system that formed just south of us in Louisiana. Depending on if it goes to the west or to the east of us, when it goes on shore, makes a determination of how much extra, I call it storm surge.
Right.
They call it an increase in tide. So this week we could have had a 1 to 3 foot increase in the tidal above the normal tides along our coastline. But that all depends on where that low pressure system goes into the Gulf. So for us, it went to the east of us. So we didn't, experience that much additional coastal flooding from that particular low. But it is very important where those systems go in, and the National Hurricane Center was boasting last week at how well their models are doing, and that their models pretty much outdid everybody else's models on the trajectory where those storms are going into. So they're doing a very good job of predicting where landfall is going to be. What they did want us to express this year is that we need to get people to quit focusing on the cone.
Okay,
So 10, 12 years ago, everybody was focusing on that direct line before they had the cone.
right.
Okay, so people would think, well, the line's going right into home. I don't have to worry about it if I'm anywhere else. So then they came out with the cone of error to show that that line could move left or right certain miles. Now the issue is that people are focusing on that cone, but they're not focusing on where the storm surge is going to be. And if you look at the storm surge warnings and watches, you'll see that those storm surge warning and watches extend very far
Way beyond.
away from the cone.
Right.
So in particular in Florida last year with Hurricane Ian, the communities to the south of that cone really got impacted by the storm surge.
right.
And they just didn't focus on that. And you had a lot of people that stayed and thought that the water wouldn't get that high, even though the National Hurricane Center had issued those storm surge warning and watches for those communities.
You know, and so you bring up a really good point, Earl, about seeing the bigger picture. It's important to and literally look beyond the cone. It's really interesting to me is how we've come so far between where that line was and everybody seeing, okay, that's the line. Everywhere else, I'm good. Now the cone, and of course the cone of uncertainty, if you will, uncertain of where that storm's going to go. But it's a really interesting statistic that we know, we've been knowing, but they reiterated that last week. Tell us about that statistic about how people really get impacted.
Yeah, well, more people die from inland flooding or storm surge than the winds of a hurricane.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about inland flooding, we're talking about excessive rainfall. Typically, when these small tropical storms come on shore, they're slow moving and they're dumping a lot of water,
Right.
a lot of rainwater in the community. So it's important, I try to get people not to say it's just a tropical storm or it's just a Category 1.
Right.
And unfortunately for Ida, we had people saying it's just a Category 4, which kind of amazes me because there's only one more category to go up, which is Category 5.
And we were so close to it.
Yes.
Right.
So, but a tropical storm, a Category 1, can bring significant water, from rainfall, and we can get some tidal surge from that. Fortunately, here in Terrebonne Parish, we have a great hurricane protection system. The Terrebonne Levee and Conservation District with Reggie Dupre and Tony Alfred and that group and that board has done a great job for us in providing us protection against the smaller storms, tropical storms, Category 1s and 2s, some areas and maybe a 3. But there may be a time when on these stronger storms, such as 4s and 3, 4s, and 5, where we may get storm surges that are going to be calculated above what the levee system,
Right.
The height of the levee system. So we, as residents, need to pay attention to that and make sure that we know that there's a possibility of maybe some overtopping. But my good friend and buddy, Wendell Curall, used to always say, these levees were built to protect property, not lives. So when there is a storm surge warning issued, people should probably heed those issues and evacuate.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. Ian, who didn't have the same kinds of protections there in Florida that we have here, especially with regards to how it came in. But there were a lot of people, like you mentioned, to the south of where that storm came in, that they had significant flooding.
Yeah, and pretty much they were on that northeast quadrant that we always talk about that brings in that storm surge. And I mean, if you looked at the newscast and the video that's available when that storm struck, you'll see the devastation that storm surge caused. And so, I just want to, let people know and be aware that storm surge is very dangerous during a hurricane. There was even a mention at the conference last week that they may not, the Hurricane Center may look at doing away with the categories because of the danger of the storm surge. just because it's a Cat 1 doesn't mean you're going to have a very low storm surge. It all depends on where you live and what your coastline looks like on what that storm surge is going to be.
Topography.
But and when they said that, I kind of said, I don't know if that's really going to happen, because we're so used to using, because the new Safer System scale, if you try to go find it online, if you look at a new Safer System scale, it does not have the storm surge on it anymore.
Okay.
A correlation to storm surge, because
Right.
they haven't found that there is really a correlation
Yeah.
to the number of the rating of the storm, the category of the storm, to the height of that storm surge.
And so and they're all different with regards to how and where you live, the topography of that area, and what kind of levee systems you may have in place or not. I mean, all of that factors in.
That's correct.
But inland flooding can also be a very significant concern. You know, if we get rains and heavy rains for a significant amount of time, it doesn't have as much to do with the storm surge as it does with the significant rainfall. And that's where people need to be aware and conscientious of what they can do at their own home. Clearing out their gutters, clearing out those drains, making sure there's not a lot of debris in those drain systems. We need that water to be able to get out.
Right, and now during the summer, right before hurricane season, is a good time to take a look at your drain. If you can see inside there and look in there, if it looks like it's full, contact the Public Works Department and say, hey, the drain in front of my home, it looks like it's full of dirt, or silt is what we call it.
Right.
To please come out and take a look at it and maybe pump it out. If you see some obstructions in any of our drainage ditches while you're riding around town doing errands or going to work, call the Public Works Department and say, hey, look, I just passed on such and such a street. It looks like there's an obstruction in the drainage ditch. It's important that we get those things out, not only just for hurricanes, for just rainfall events that we have here in Terrebonne Parish.
This week, I saw some obstructions, but they were just playing. It was just the kids.
And I used to do the same thing.
Yeah, right? And so that was some of the most fun, right?
Oh, yes.
We get a little rainfall, get a little water in the ditch, get to go play.
That's right.
But again, you can do a lot of things. One of those is being vigilant, to watch and listen, to be able to find out how to get more information. And your website does such a great job about that, as people can do that. Can we share with people how they
Sure.
can go
Well,
about
right now
And
the best way to get information from us is through our app, which is available for Android and Apple. It's the Apple Store and the Android Store. I forgot what they call the Android store, but
You still do it through the app.
Google
It's called
Play.
Google Play.
Google
right.
Play. So so if you search Terrebonne OSEP in those apps, there it is on the screen.
Thank you, Jim.
If you got your phone right now, you could shoot that QR code. But that's the best way to get information pretty quickly on what's happening in Terrebonne Parish.
We spend a lot of time talking about all the different things impacting and affecting our community. I love the fact that we get lots of information and people can get trainings about how to keep other people safe. Let's talk a little bit about Stop the Bleed.
Sure. So Stop the Bleed is a program started by another university outside of our area, but the Louisiana Emergency Response Network, which is the LEARN, which is an organization, actually it's an agency of the state of Louisiana to promote, pretty much they promote stroke awareness, heart attack awareness, and other injuries.
Cardiac, pulmonary awareness,
trauma.
those kinds of things. Right.
So they're going to have a Stop the Bleed program or training on May 25th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Houma Municipal Auditorium. Once again, May 25th, 5 to 7 p.m. at the Houma Municipal Auditorium. So what this program does, it teaches you how to use a tourniquet,
Right.
okay, and also how to stop a bleeding from a trauma accident.
Right.
Using either a T-shirt or a belt for a tourniquet or something to stuff into the wound to stop the bleeding and to prevent you from bleeding out.
Right.
Okay. So most people who die from trauma die from bleeding.
Blood loss.
From blood loss. So if you remember, probably 40, 45 years ago, there was a big push for everybody to learn CPR.
CPR, right?
Okay, and that the benefits of having CPR to, if somebody falls out and has a heart attack, start CPR, you could save their life. Now they're seeing that if we can stop the bleeding during trauma accidents, that we can save other people's lives. So this program, you will go for the training. They'll teach you how to use tourniquets, give you a little physiology of what happens when you have lots of blood loss, and teach you how to use a tourniquet. Stop the Bleed has a tourniquet you could purchase if
Okay.
you want to. I don't know if they're going to have any at this particular training, but you can get them on Amazon or anywhere else that you can carry in your purse or in your car.
Right.
That you would need in the event that you come across someone that has excessive bleeding. It's been a great program. They went out and taught first responders first, firemen, police officers. EMS naturally knows how to do that already. And now they're trying to reach out to the public and show the importance of why you need to learn this. School teachers, office people, if you at your office, at least somebody that knows, at least one person that knows how to do this. Just the general public that maybe witness a car accident and you run over there and you see somebody profusely bleeding, that you know how to stop that bleeding and possibly save that person's life.
And we're talking about saving lives. We're talking about saving limbs.
That's correct.
Those things matter, and we may think, oh, saving lives, but when you can save a limb, that's another really big thing when it talks about loss of function, and that's a really big deal. It's really interesting that I keep in my car with me, and it's ironic that we kind of had this transition of vehicles here in the last few years, but as this transition of vehicles, I keep with me my breathing protector, and it's just a way for me to be able to keep myself safe if I need to do CPR at an event. I want to be able to have one of these tourniquets.
Yeah, so they make a Stop the Bleed kit, and within that kit there's a tourniquet, and I think there's gloves, and I think there's pressure gauze in there, other things that you could use to stop the bleed. And there are kits that you go all over to these different office spaces that have the AEDs on the wall.
Right.
You can also get a Stop the Bleed kit to put on the wall too, so that those that are trained can run in there and get a tourniquet or whatever they need to stop the bleeding for that particular person.
And what we're doing is we're trying to stop profuse bleeding, as you mentioned, at the scene of any event.
That's
so if
correct.
there's some event that causes someone to have a great deal of bleeding, we just have a way to slow that down to be able to or stop that bleeding until we can get EMS officials and people there that can help with that.
Right. A lot of our emergency type stuff like the Stop the Bleed program and CPR and other trauma procedures that take place as EMS, a lot of that was learned on the battlefield.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So a lot of those techniques are learned on the battlefield, and then, they study them, and then they bring them out into the public if that's something that the public can assist with, such as the Stop the Bleed. So very good program. I'd recommend everyone please try to do the training.
Yeah, and so, Jen, I agree, but maybe put that information back up there. I want to let people know, Stop the Bleed, May 25th, 5 to 7, as Earl mentioned, at the Houma Municipal Auditorium, 880 Verrett Street in Houma, Louisiana 70360. You can join the Learn Region 3 Commission for National Stop the Bleed Day, which is on May 25th, another one of the reasons why they're doing it that day. And this was developed by the American College of Surgeons, and Stop the Bleed actually teaches the 3 quick actions that anyone can do to save a life by addressing the #1 cause of preventable death after injury, which is bleeding. So members of the public are welcome and encouraged to attend. You can go and register. All you have to really do is type in Stop the Bleed, Houma, and you'll have Eventbrite will come up, and you can register through Eventbrite. Very easy. I did it on my phone just a few minutes ago. So very easy to be able to do. Earl, go ahead.
Yeah, even if you don't register and you just show up that day, please do.
Yeah, and lots of room at the Houma Municipal Auditorium.
That's correct.
One of our larger event sites to be able to do that. And so wanted to be able to help other people, or we always appreciate you bringing that kind of information to us. Appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to be here.
All right. And that will do it for this particular segment of Bayou Time. Don't go anywhere. Whole lot more local programming right here on HTV.